Welcome to Unapologetically AuDHD. I'm Patricia Young, MSW, and I'm an AuDHD former therapist and current coach.
I'm Alex McLaughlin, MSW and LICSW, and I'm an AuDHD therapist. This is a podcast with two friends processing what it's like to live in body-minds that diverge from neuronormative standards, and everything that comes with it, the good, the bad, and the beautifully messy.
We aim to release 2 or more episodes per month. This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for help from a licensed mental health practitioner. Hello and welcome back. Glad to have you here. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing pretty good, a little tired, but yeah, otherwise doing okay. How about you?
I think I'm doing okay. I've been kind of in a nice spot for a little bit. I'm enjoying it. I'm going to enjoy it until it's not here anymore.
We love that.
Yeah.
Got to take advantage.
Absolutely. Today, we're going to be talking about how to take care of yourself during these trying times, during collective trauma, activism. And I think we often feel like in order to be supporting what's going on, it has to look a certain way. And so we're going to be talking about ways that may be more neurodivergent-friendly if you have chronic illness, ways that you can participate that may look a little different, but are certainly as valid and helpful and useful as what we think of. I feel like I'm already stumbling over my words, Alex. I think I'm going to turn it over to you. And we have a little disclaimer about sound also before we totally get underway.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I didn't perceive it as stumbling over your words. But I understand it might have felt that way to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I am laying down on a moon pod, which is like a beanbag chair type thing. And unfortunately, in my office, this is the only way I can lay down. And I have to lay down for my health. And so if I adjust even slightly, it might make a little bit of noise. I'll try and keep the adjustments to a minimum, but did want to let folks know that you might hear some, I don't know, just extra background noise.
It's Alex rolling around in the moon pod.
Yep. Yeah, so I think first things first, right? I think it's important to recognize the kind of moment that we're under in the United States or on Turtle Island. In at least, so I'm on Wapakoti land, which is colonized as Minnesota. And so there's a lot of ice activity here, as folks probably are aware, because I feel like it's all over my news feed and like my social media feeds. Probably other people are aware what's happening here. But obviously, like ICE's occupation is in other parts of the country as well. So we just thought it would be helpful today to talk about how to take care of yourself during times of collective trauma. Yeah, anything else you want to say, Patricia, to kind of intro as far as further intro?
I think that my intention, and I need to check with you, Alex, is that our intention is not to traumatize anybody. And I don't think we're going to be talking about any specifics of the unthinkable things that are happening right now. But I just want to name that we are living in unprecedented times. And for those of us that are very justice sensitive and are feminists and are aware of how much patriarchy has ruled and how much people of color are just marginalized and people in the LGBTQ community are marginalized, just how upside down and unharnessed the world feels right now. And I just want to acknowledge that it is a really, really, really hard time to be living with and living through right now. And I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah. And especially for Black and brown folks, things are going to feel really unsafe, slash, like, right, people are being deported. Like, we know that
Mhm.
that's happening. And so, if those of us that are like white or white passing are like impacted by it, just obviously it's going to be like impacting Black and brown communities even more so. And like, I know of, not personally, but like families that are won't leave the house because they're terrified,
Right.
rightfully so. I've now heard that families are starting to like hide in other people's homes. And
Mhm.
so, I just also want to name that, like, what my experience is as like a mixed race white passing individual is going to be vastly different than someone that's Latina or from the Somali community, or even just like perceived as Black or
Mhm.
brown, even like, right. And we know that like Indigenous people have been detained as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and just like as some people that are really empathetic or justice sensitive, like you're saying, like, even if we're not part of those communities, like it's so hard to bear witness to what's happening, and to, I don't know, if I'm not gonna like go into details, right? But the videos of Renee Good, Alex Preddy, like, I experienced secondary trauma watching those, to be
Mhm.
completely frank, and
Yeah.
so even just like watching ICE's occupation, besides those specific instances of like murder, even just like watching ICE get out of vehicles and detain people, like, that's really fucking activating for my nervous system.
Mhm.
And yeah, so if we're more empathetic or justice sensitive, it's going to impact us even more so.
Yeah. And if you are someone who has experienced trauma, that many of these things are re-traumatizing and putting people into a freeze mode or just feeling really helpless and hopeless in that. I'm not saying that that's okay, but if that's something that you're experiencing, you are not alone in that.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much I mean, like, I don't know anyone on Wapakoti land in Minnesota that is doing well right now,
Right.
right? Everyone is experiencing what's happening in our communities. And like, obviously, there's some communities where ICE is more active, and there are some communities, right, where you're more directly affected by the occupation. But yeah, I mean, like, so many folks are that I talk to are feeling that like helplessness, feeling like, what can I do as an individual, feeling powerless, feeling like, yeah, just stuck in like hypervigilant state, or like you're saying, a
Mhm.
freeze state. I just want to normalize, like you're saying, like, that's completely normal during collective trauma to be experiencing the occupation in that way.
Yeah. Well, and with the Epstein Files coming out too, that many people who've experienced abuse and trafficking are also being re-traumatized. And if you believe in women's rights, and again, I'm going to go back to the capitalism and the patriarchy, we're just seeing ways in which women's voices and their bodies and their rights are not being honored and taken advantage of. And many of us are waiting for consequences to happen. And I think that compounds that sense of hopelessness and frustration. And for some people, a lot of anger and injustice, depending on where you're at and how you respond to all of this. But it's a lot. It's a lot for all of us to be dealing with right now for different reasons in different ways.
Yeah. And thank you for, yeah, bringing that up, the Epstein files. To be completely frank, I haven't had the capacity to
Yeah.
even really consume any media around Epstein files. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, folks with uteruses are, we know, are more likely to be survivors of SA. And yeah, so yeah, that's a great point about But if you're someone that's experienced SA or child sexual abuse or, have been trafficked,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just going to add on to that trauma you already have.
Yeah. And what Alex just said, that Alex has made a choice not to take in any of that information on the Epstein files. I heard a therapist say that if you are a child SA survivor or SA survivor, that there's no need for you to look and read the files, because once you see them, you can't undo them. You can't undo what you've seen, and it's okay to not look at that. And part of self-care is deciding what you can and can't see. Like, I'm aware of what happened to Renee Good and Alex Preddy. I haven't watched the specific videos because that ends up being really traumatizing to me. I can tell you what's going on, the overview of what's going on with the Epstein files, but I can't get into the specifics. So everybody has a different way of managing what they need to do to take care of themselves. And I think often as neurodivergent autistic folks, we want to have information, and we also need to be really mindful about our capacity and what is going to end up being traumatizing and not helpful for us.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
Yeah.
And that is a way to take care of ourselves, is to be
Mhm.
mindful about our consumption.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to someone, and this was maybe like, I think after Trump was elected, or no, after he was inaugurated. Like, I was consuming Sophie Spector, I think is her last name, under the desk news. Even just watching their one video a day that was like the recap of the day was putting me into a state where I was engaging in so much escapism.
Mhm.
And to me, I had to then kind of assess, like, okay, is that's too much for my system?
Mhm.
Like, that even that 5-minute video was too much for my system.
Mhm.
And so I think if you're someone that values being informed, just being really mindful around when you're starting to like shut down or feeling overwhelmed or starting to feel that helplessness creep in or that drive for escapism creep in, like that might be an indication that amount of consumption is maybe too much, or like that type
Mhm.
of consumption is like too much for your system. Not to say that you're not going to have some of that, but if it's to the point where it's like disrupting your life, and like, I don't know, I guess I'm like saying all this, like it's going to disrupt our lives. So
Mhm.
like for me, the escapism was like watching too much TV and like staying up late, and then it was impacting me the several days later. That's a big impact.
Mhm.
A half hour of like feeling whatever hypo aroused state that's more manageable. Like maybe that's your sweet spot. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be, but also this is going to be very dependent on what your baseline level of dysregulation is. But just keep an eye on it, I guess, is like maybe what I'm trying to say. How do you know, Patricia, like what is too much for you?
I don't always, and I often find out after the fact. And I want to emphasize that it's not the activity, because we can use TV, movies, social media, food, sex, sleep, rest, activity, time with friends. Like, all of those things can be adaptive, and they can also become maladaptive. And so I want to be very clear that there's nothing wrong with any of those things. And I think right now, I'm someone that tends to use food more than anything. So there have been times when I'm like, oh, I guess I just needed to check out a little bit and use some food. And so having some compassion for myself. But that can also be what's going to feel nurturing. And maybe there's something that you ate growing up that really is a comfort food. And so if you have the ability to make that, have somebody make it for you, buy it, prepare it, that's an okay thing. I love TV, can be a great escape for me. So I really enjoy it. And I don't always have balance. Sometimes I do. For me, being able to move my body is probably one of the best regulators that I have. And I don't do it for any other reason than it really helps to regulate my nervous system. And when I am having a hard time, often just getting up and being able to move a little bit helps. And I recognize that that doesn't work for everybody, but you just kind of pay attention. And if you think that you're using something too much or not enough, it can be under eating. It can be sleeping too much, not sleeping enough, staying up late, staying in bed too long. I mean, it can change. And I think when we have the ability to have compassion for what's going on and to ask ourselves what we're needing, it's almost like if we can treat ourselves like a young child who is not feeling well, and what do we need to try and care for ourselves. But it's a very imperfect process. At least it is for me.
Yeah. That's a great point about it being imperfect, and also like it's not the activity, right? Like these things are coping skills.
Yeah.
And they can be maladaptive, and also like to expect, I guess, like what I'm worried, I'm having this fear in my head right now. So I'm just going to name it that,
Mhm.
like, what I said might come across as like, you need to be functioning, quote unquote. And like, I just want to be clear that I don't think anyone is quote unquote functioning at
Mm-mm.
their optimal level right now. And I think expecting that is not realistic. I think for me, what my indicator is like, if what I'm consuming is too much, is if it impacts me for like several days.
Mhm.
But that's going to be, you know, different for everyone. So, yeah, like you're saying, just it is a balancing act, and it's not like a perfect system. And there might be a day where your system is more sensitive. So, like maybe that 5 minutes that you normally consume, like maybe that's too much that day because maybe there
Mhm.
was something else that occurred that day that you're processing, or like there were unexpected changes that day. So I think just really being aware of what maybe is taking your spoons,
Mhm.
maybe is what I'm trying to say, and like what's exertion.
Yeah.
I'm using the term exertion because I use the visible band, and that's the term. I don't know if this is like part of the MECFS community, if that, I don't know where the term comes from, but like cognitive exertion. So like thinking,
Mhm.
processing information, communicating, like that's exertion, socially exerting. So engaging in like a dialogue with someone, being social, processing what you're going to say, what they're saying, you know, the visuals, right? All of that is exertion. And so if there's a day where you're there's emotional exertion as well. And so, you know, just knowing that all of those things are taking your energy,
Mhm.
and how is that affecting you?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a point I wanted to make, but I totally forgot what it was. So we'll just move on till I can remember what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think other things folks can do during collective trauma is lean into routines and comforts, like you were saying with comfort foods.
Mhm.
Maybe spend more time doing things that bring you comfort and are routine for you. Yeah, what else?
I remembered what I was going to say is medication. That, if you feel like you need to go on medication for the time being, if you're on medication, it's not working. I've been working with a number of clients that have had to have changes in their medication because what's going on is really impacting them. And I know I spoke with a psychiatrist who just said that they're seeing so many more people right now that are really, really struggling.
Mm,
And we have such sensitive nervous systems that whatever we need to do to take care of ourselves, that's really an okay option. And if you are someone who doesn't want to be on medication, maybe look at it as, I can try it for a short amount of time. And at some point, if I want to change or go off it, I can talk to my provider and do that. That there's no shame in doing what we need to do to have regulated nervous systems.
mhm. And right, that's part of, I think, part of activism is like as neurodivergent individuals, sort of like working to like regulate our system and survive
Hmm.
is like us being alive, like
Yeah.
is part of the work.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, if medication's not your thing, I was working with an internal medicine doctor and we talk a lot about supplements. I mean, he did put me on like a couple of medications for some of my chronic illness stuff, but right, supplements or like even herbs, like
Hmm.
Chinese herbs can be alternatives to Western medication.
Yep. I love supplements. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sleep, focusing on sleep as much as you can, you know. I
Hmm.
know obviously if your sleep is being impacted by what's happening, like giving yourself time then for rest more, like focusing more on rest and maybe reducing your exertion that you're engaging in each day if you're not getting enough sleep.
Hmm.
Spending time in community.
I think time in community is definitely, if you're able to, I think that's one of the ways that we get through this is being with other people that are supportive and nurturing, because this
Mhm.
sense of hopelessness and then wanting to shut down and be alone because it just feels so yucky. And if you're
Yeah.
able to find ways to reach out, and it doesn't have to be face to face, it can be using Marco Polo, it can be using text, it can be over email, it can be over Zoom, that there are lots of ways that we can find and connect, or using, I think Signal is voice messages. Is that right?
Signal is an encrypted
Yeah.
chat
I'm on Signal. I should have
service.
known that. There's another app where you can leave voice messages back and forth. So there are lots of ways that if you're someone who doesn't want to talk on the phone, or being face to face with people is just too hard, or your people aren't local, if there are ways that you can stay connected, I think that's a really important one. And if you can't, that's okay. Like, this is not fuel to beat yourself up with.
Yeah. And I think also like parallel play or like body doubling can be helpful
Hmm.
here if like you maybe don't have the social battery to engage in like a social interaction in the traditional sense, like even just hopping on a video call and like both doing your own hobby
Hmm.
can be nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? What are some other ways to
I think if you
manage?
enjoy reading or any type of hobby or craft, spending time with animals, depending on where you live, being outdoor in nature, being barefoot, provided it's not snowing and icy where you're at, having your hands in the dirt can be really helpful. Cooking, gardening, if those are things that you enjoy. And there were months when I couldn't read, I couldn't. And there are times when I get so overstimulated. It's interesting. We went away this last weekend. I had a great time, but I probably had 3 or 4 days that had more one on one time with people, and it was all lovely. There was no dysregulation, there was no stress. But it's interesting, when we came back, I wasn't able to watch TV for a few days because it just felt like that was too much work. And
Mm.
my go to is social media. And so I spent a couple nights, instead of watching TV with my husband, I just was on social media because I, I'm able to curate things that are calming and soothing for me. So it's just those little adjustments of what you need to do. Finding a favorite show that you've watched a number of times that helps your brain relax. It is predictable, so your brain doesn't have to work, which is why we often like to watch things on repeat, because it gives our brain a chance to be engaged but relax.
And it gives our nervous system that predictability, which is
Yeah,
we need more of that right now.
right.
Even neurotypical people.
Hmm.
Yeah, when you were talking about gardening, crocheting, like reading, doing a hobby, like what I hear, and I don't know if this is what you're saying, but for me, I think it's important we spend time not thinking about
Hmm.
like what's happening in the world. I do think some escapism is actually needed because if we're thinking about what's happening all the time, that's not going to be great for us.
Hmm.
I do not recommend that to anyone.
Well, even the name escapism, like, that's capitalistic in itself.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah. And like
Yeah.
for me it's just not thinking about what's happening in the world. I do think we need that.
Yeah.
We need time to do that.
Yeah. if you're in a place to be of service to others, I think that that's always helpful when we get out of ourselves. But that may not be something that's feasible right now, but it could be as simple as walking a neighbor's dog, or if you bake something or cook something, bringing something to a neighbor. Again, this may be too much to ask, but I think those ways of being in community, going with somebody to a doctor or an appointment, those are ways that we can show up for other people that, again, create that sense of community and belonging.
Yeah. Speaking of, shall we transition to talking about ways to show up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that we think about we have to show up and protest, and sometimes those things are not feasible. I know here in San Diego, we have the Bridge Brigade, and people show up over certain bridges at certain times with flags and signs, just protesting what's going on. There's an app called 5Calls. If you're someone who likes making phone calls, it will show who your representatives are. It will give you scripts of things that you can say so you can call and leave a message for your representatives. If you're someone like me who prefers sending emails, there are organizations that you can send emails to your representatives, you can sign petitions. There are lots of ways that you can write postcards to people to encourage them to vote. There are lots of ways that we can participate without physically having to get up and protest, because for a lot of people, that's just not safe. That's just not a safe thing to be doing right now.
Yeah. And I think also, like, it's not, part of me is like, it's not safe, and being Black and brown is not safe.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, like,
Yeah.
I think there is an element of discomfort that, like, white and white passing folks need to experience for it, like, in activism. And, like, I'm not saying, like, go, do something that's illegal, like, actually illegal, and, like, and right, I think if, like, the sensory environment, I guess for me, I think about protests being, like, so overstimulating, and while I love them and I wish I could do them right now, because I think they can be so healing to be in such a large group of individuals, like, physically showing up, that if that's gonna put you back for several, like, days or weeks, like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe that's not your thing, like you're saying. Yeah, I also was gonna say, with the 5Calls app, I don't like making phone calls. What is nice is that I know that the representative is never gonna answer, so it always goes to voicemail. I've never had someone actually pick up. So if that helps, ease your mind, and they give you a script. I don't remember if you said that, but they give you a script of what to say. And there's, like, so many different categories you can choose from, like, what do you care about? And then they'll give you your representatives and the script and all of that. And you do everything within the app. I know in Minnesota, around Wapakoti land, there's an organization called the Sunrise Movement, and I think they're, like, a national organization. So the Minneapolis chapter, they put together a list of hotels where ICE is staying, and they're encouraging people to, I forget what they call the name of this protest, but it's like I wanna say wake and bake, but I know that's not what it is. It's like a wake up. I think it's called a wake up, where they're going outside of the hotel, making a ton of noise, like, essentially putting pressure on the hotels to not house ICE agents. And you can also book a hotel room for, like, a not a refundable hotel room, where you can cancel within a certain amount of time to make it harder for ICE agents to book hotels.
We're not recommending that you do that. We're just mentioning things that people are doing.
And so I will say some of the things are actually working. Like, some of the hotels, like, closed down in Minneapolis. Some of the hotels actually closed because, ICE agents, because of, like, all of these things. And so I will also say, coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning, engaging in news where there are messages of hope, where like you're seeing positive outcomes is also important.
Mhm.
What else?
I think I'm out of things that I can think of at the moment.
Sharing resources. So, like mutual aid websites, resources related to how to stay safe. If you want to get, become a legal observer, which is essentially like learning how to legally observe detainment in progress. I know folks are on signal chats for their communities, and when I know that there's multiple things that people can do. Like, for example, some folks are running license plate numbers to see, like, is this an ICE vehicle? Some folks are following those vehicles. Some folks just might go outside and observe and like record what's happening. Talking to, I think talking to like folks about what's going on and informing them if they're not informed. Potentially like having conversations with folks who are maybe pro ICE, if you have the spoons for that.
Mhm.
Just opening the dialogue, right? Like approaching it from a place of curiosity can be more effective than like trying to change their mind, right? Those are ways to show up as well.
Yeah.
Donating. People are delivering meals, people are helping volunteer at like food banks and stuff like that.
Mhm.
There's so many things you can do.
Yeah. I heard there's a Minnesota tow truck driver who's returning people's cars to their homes if they've been detained and taken away at no charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all I have. Do you have any more, Alex?
Not off the top of my head. I'm sure there's many more ideas,
Yeah.
or like ways people can show up, but those are the things that I've heard about people doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the conversation, and yeah, I hope everyone is doing what they can to take care of themselves and their communities and survive.
Yeah. Hang in there, everybody.
Yeah.
This is a tough time that we're going through, and we will get through it, and it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Alex, where can people find you if they want to work with you?
So I have a therapy and assessment practice called the Divergent Grove Therapy, and it's www.thedivergentgrovetherapy.com. I specialize in working with autistic ADHDers, folks with OCD, and provide autism and ADHD assessments. I have a coaching and training practice. To be honest, I don't have the capacity to do anything with it right now, but it is there. I'll put that info in the show notes, and as well as the website for my therapy and assessment practice. How about you?
You can find me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I work with neurodivergent folks, a lot of late diagnosed, late realized folks. Things that I am particularly fond of is parenting, boundaries, communication, adjusting to a diagnosis. There's more, but I can't think of what it is. I'm also PDA and have OCD. So those are things that I can also help you with. If you want to reach out to either Alex or me, you can reach us at unapologetically AuDHD, AUDHD at gmail.com. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I know that there's been a delay in our recording. We do the best that we can. We will show up when we can, and we hope that it models compassion and knowing that it's okay for you to take care of yourself and show up when you can. I think that's it. Anything else, Alex?
Mm-mm. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day. Bye. Thanks for spending time with us in this space where your too muchness is never too much. Remember, you're not broken and you're definitely not alone. We're here to honor the complexity, celebrate the nuance, and walk this neurodivergent path together.
You might consider giving us a rating and a review on the platform you listen to podcasts. It gives others an opportunity to see our podcast and walk this path with us. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind to your nervous system, and stay unapologetically AuDHD. You belong here.